The first reaction to the news was disbelief, and that reaction spread faster than excitement. When whispers began circulating about Sam Heughan's next role, even people close to the production assumed there had been a misunderstanding. The description didn't match the image he had spent years building, and it certainly didn't align with what audiences expected from him. At first, many dismissed it as another exaggerated rumor that would quietly disappear. But it didn't disappear. Instead, more details surfaced, each one harder to ignore than the last. The role wasn't heroic, charming, or safe, and it wasn't designed to make viewers comfortable. It lived in a psychological gray zone that most actors avoid, especially those with a devoted fanbase that prefers familiarity. What shocked people most was that Sam hadn't been chased into this role. According to those involved, he sought it out deliberately. The script had circulated quietly for months, passed over by several well-known names who considered it too risky. When Sam expressed interest, the response from producers was not excitement, but caution. They warned him what it could cost. For years, Sam had been associated with strength, reliability, and emotional accessibility. He was someone audiences trusted, someone whose presence felt grounding even in dark stories. This new character offered none of that comfort, and embracing it meant dismantling the assumptions viewers brought with them. The contrast was not accidental. The character was morally unstable, emotionally volatile, and deeply flawed in ways that resist easy redemption. There were no heroic arcs written into the script, no clear signals telling the audience when to sympathize. Playing this role required Sam to surrender control over how he would be perceived. That surrender was the point. Behind the scenes, there was hesitation about letting him take the role. Some worried it would confuse fans. Others feared backlash that could overshadow the project entirely. A few quietly questioned whether Sam was prepared for how unforgiving the reaction might be. He listened, and he didn't back away. Those close to him described his reasoning as simple but unsettling. He didn't want to repeat himself, and he didn't want to coast on goodwill. The fear of becoming predictable had begun to outweigh the fear of being disliked. The decision marked a clear shift in how he viewed his career. Sam was no longer choosing roles to reinforce an image, but to challenge it. He had reached a stage where maintaining approval felt less important than pursuing something that scared him creatively. This role, more than any he had considered before, represented that fear. Preparation for the character began quietly and intensely. There were no flashy announcements or behind-the-scenes teasers designed to soften the reveal. Sam altered his routine, his physical presence, and his emotional approach to acting. People on set noticed the difference immediately, not in his professionalism, but in the weight he carried. The atmosphere around the production changed. Conversations became more serious, rehearsals more deliberate. Even the crew sensed they were part of something that wouldn't be easily categorized or safely received. This wasn't a project designed to please everyone, and no one pretended otherwise. As rumors reached the public, reactions split sharply. Some fans expressed excitement at seeing Sam step outside his comfort zone, while others reacted with anxiety and resistance. The idea of him embodying a character so far removed from what they loved felt almost like a betrayal. That emotional response only reinforced how deeply his image had become ingrained. Sam did not respond to the growing debate. He didn't reassure fans or attempt to reframe expectations. Silence, in this case, was not avoidance but acceptance. He understood that no explanation would soften the impact of what audiences were about to see. The role itself promised no middle ground. Early descriptions suggested a performance that would demand attention and provoke discomfort. Viewers would be forced to confront aspects of the character without the relief of clear moral guidance. That kind of experience doesn't invite casual viewing, it demands reaction. And reaction was exactly what this role was built to ignite. Those who had read the full script described it as confrontational, layered, and intentionally divisive. Success would mean critical praise and artistic respect, while failure could mean rejection on a very public scale. There was no version of this role that ended quietly. By committing to it, Sam had already set the explosion in motion. Whether it would elevate him into a new creative category or fracture the bond he shared with his audience remained uncertain. What was clear was that he had crossed a threshold that could not be uncrossed. The shock wasn't coming from the role itself, but from the fact that Sam Heughan was finally willing to risk everything people thought they knew about him. The real shock did not come from the announcement itself, but from how deliberately Sam embraced the fallout. Once production moved forward, there was no attempt to soften the narrative around the role. No interviews framed it as a challenge, in familiar, reassuring language. No assurances were offered to fans about redemption arcs or hidden warmth beneath the character's surface. Sam allowed the role to exist exactly as it was, uncomfortable, demanding, and unapologetic. That decision changed the tone of everything around the project. Studios often prepare safety nets for risky performances, but this time, there were none. Marketing remained restrained, almost cautious, as if even the people behind the film understood that hype could not protect it. The role would succeed or fail on its own terms, and Sam appeared ready for either outcome. As filming progressed, the transformation became undeniable. Those on set described a performance that resisted charm and familiarity. Sam stripped away the gestures and expressions audiences associated with him, replacing them with something colder and harder to read. Watching him work was unsettling, not because it lacked control, but because it was so controlled in a different way. The emotional toll was visible. Sam reportedly limited contact with the outside world during production, choosing isolation over distraction. This was not method acting for spectacle, but focus taken to its extreme. Immersing himself in a character without moral safety rails requires distance from everything comforting. That distance extended beyond the set. Friends noticed that he avoided discussing the project in detail, not out of secrecy, but because there was nothing reassuring to say. He knew the role would challenge perceptions, and he refused to preempt that confrontation with explanations. Letting people react honestly mattered more than managing approval. When early test footage was screened internally, reactions were intense. Some viewers praised the performance as fearless and transformative. Others were visibly unsettled, questioning whether audiences would accept seeing Sam in such a light. What no one disputed was its impact. Indifference was not an option. That was when the industry took notice. Critics who had once categorized Sam too narrowly began reconsidering his range. Casting conversations shifted, no longer centered on whether he could carry a project, but on how far he was willing to go. The role, controversial as it was, had already changed how he was perceived professionally. Public anticipation grew tense rather than celebratory. Fans debated not whether the role would be good, but whether they were ready for it. Some expressed excitement at the risk, while others mourned the loss of the image they had grown attached to. The divide wasn't about quality, it was about expectation. Sam remained silent through it all. He did not defend his choice, nor did he justify it. By refusing to explain himself, he forced the conversation to center on the work rather than the persona. That restraint signaled confidence, not detachment. The explosion, when it came, was never going to be literal. It was emotional, perceptual, and deeply personal for those watching. This role wasn't designed to shock through action alone, but through discomfort. It challenged viewers to confront why they wanted Sam to remain a certain way, and what it meant when he refused. For Sam, the risk was never about failure. It was about stagnation. Remaining admired but predictable had begun to feel like its own kind of trap. By choosing a role that disrupted that safety, he reclaimed control over his trajectory. Whatever the reception, one thing was already certain. This performance would not be forgotten quickly, nor would it be absorbed quietly. It marked a line between the actor audiences thought they knew and the one he was becoming. That shift alone justified the risk. In the end, the explosion was not something audiences needed to brace for. It was something Sam had already accepted. He didn't choose the role to be liked, or even understood. He chose it because it forced change, and once that choice was made, there was no reason to look back.